Talk now, though, to Richard Holden MP, Shadow Paymaster General. He's down, I think, in Westminster for us. Richard, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, good to see you. Big week this coming up. Obviously, Donald Trump's inauguration today. Fascinating what's going on in America with the way that he's kind of dismantling the wokery that's been gripping that country for the last 4 years under Joe Biden. A lot of our listeners and viewers this morning, Richard, very, very galvanised by Donald Trump and by him coming in and hoping that it's going to have some kind of knock-on effect on this country.
Yes, well, look, I think there's actually a real opportunity here for the UK to set a new course. I think the Labour government have probably made that about as difficult as they could possibly have done with some of the things that people like David Lammy have been saying about Donald Trump over the last few years, things like Sadiq Khan have been saying about him as well. I think, obviously that's quite difficult, but we have a really strong historic relationship with the United States, whether that comes to intelligence sharing, whether it comes to our defence relationship, whether it comes to our economic relationship. And I think actually a bit of dynamism in the world economy is what we need to see at the moment. When Labour came to power in the UK, they inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7. Now it's a flatlining economy. They inherited one with inflation down at 2%. That's already crept back up with predictions it's going to go further. And obviously that massive jobs tax absolutely hammering businesses and employees and people looking for jobs here in the UK. Totally the opposite of what is happening in America. So I hope our government will learn some of those lessons about that positive can-do approach that President Trump is going to bring to the White House.
Well, you'd like to think that Rachel Reeves might take some notice of that. She's off to Davos, of course, at the moment this week, and I don't know what she's going to do there. But meanwhile, back home, she's got a department called the Value for Money Department. Apparently it's been called a waste of time and money by the Treasury officials who are supposedly overseeing it.
Yeah. So we've heard this is the MPs in the House of Commons, a Labour majority committee of Labour MPs, right? The Treasury Select Committee have come out and said actually the Office of Value for Money, they can't see what value it has, and it's just costing money. I mean, it's just absolutely bananas. We've ended up in this situation where the Labour Party are bringing forwards all of these sort of big ideas, but actually all we're seeing is it costing everybody an absolute fortune, and that's the danger, I think, of what we've seen with the Labour Party. There's a lot of things which were announced, but where is the actual meat in this? They're totally the opposite to what you see from President Trump in America at the moment. And I think that's going to be a real contrast, actually. People seeing a government which is really prepared to act in their national interest on one side in the United States, compared to what this Labour government's doing here in the UK, which is clearly just undermining us at every turn, whether it comes to those issues around the economy or what you've just been talking to your previous contributor about around those issues around grooming gangs.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, she keeps sending out her deputy, Darren Jones, to talk on her behalf and on behalf of the Exchequer about this, that and the other. And yesterday, he was really struggling to understand the concept of if you tax very, very wealthy people who can live elsewhere in the world and they then leave the country and don't pay you any tax, you're actually losing money as opposed to just taxing them at a reasonable rate whereby they actually continue to pay the tax and stay where they are.
Well, you're quite right. I mean, it does feel that Darren Jones is in some form of very weirdly abusive relationship with the rest of the Labour Party at the moment, sent out on air to try and defend the utterly indefensible. I mean, you're quite right, Mike. The idea that you can... the truth is that these people were paying their tax on their UK income, right? Any money they made in the UK, they were paying it, right? What the Labour Party said is you must pay tax on any income you earn from anywhere in the world here in the UK. Well, they said, well, actually, no, we won't do that. Instead we'll go abroad where we can just pay less tax. And it seems quite... I cannot comprehend how they don't understand that. So what they've actually done is raise a tax which actually costs us more money. I mean, what sort of government would do that? Actually harming our public services, right, in order to pursue a political, ideological objective. I mean, that has got the Labour Party written right through it. And I think whether it comes to that or so many of these other changes they've brought in, they need to reverse ferret as quickly as possible, because, whether it comes to that or whether it comes to things like the business tax reliefs they're absolutely going to hammer our farmers with, that's going to really affect our food security as well, you know, and all sorts of other knock-on consequences, which we really need to have a proper think about in the long term. It's a sort of smash and grab from Rachel Reeves, which means that once you've taken it away, it's never going to be there again, right? It's actually, we need to be building something for the long term, and I think that's what Labour don't understand.
And meanwhile, they've got more problems on the horizon. Robert Jenrick calling for an investigation into the conflict of interest of the Attorney General, Lord Hermer. Not only do we now know that he made 30,000 quid representing Jerry Adams in a court case last year, but he now would appear to have been involved in defending some asylum seekers who came to the Chagos Islands from Sri Lanka and tried to gain asylum into Britain, while all the time making noises about selling or giving away the Chagos Islands with the added ticket price of 9 billion quid that we give to Mauritius.
I mean, you couldn't actually make it up with some of Keir Starmer's appointments. And this appointment of his Attorney General, just let's not forget, this was his hand-picked best mate, right? This was Emily Thornberry, who'd been there as a shadow, whatever you think of Emily Thornberry, right? She'd been there as a shadow Attorney General for about 8 years in various different roles there. And actually, Keir Starmer bulleted her and brought in his best mate, this Lord Hermer chap, and gave him a peerage, see in the House of Lords for life, etc., etc. And it looks like, yes, he's been making cash out of suing the British government over Jerry Adams. Now it's all of these links to the Chagos Islands, which he's been apparently doing the worst deal in history on, where apparently it looks like we're now going to pay another country to take off some British territory. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And I really hope the government think again on this. We need to get them to think again on issue after issue after issue. They are clearly not up to it, and we've got to get rid of them as quickly as possible. That's going to be difficult, but in the intervening period, we just got to expose them and get people like Robert Jenrick, people like Kemi Badenoch are doing that day after day in Parliament, and we're just going to give them more power to do so. Yeah,
we're doing a bit of that here as well, because we've got a nice clip today of Angela Rayner when she was in opposition, calling for all sorts of terrible things to happen to Tory ministers who used civil servants or misused civil servants for doing certain things. It turns out she's now under fire for misusing civil servants, believe it or not, moving her furniture into the Grace and Favour apartment at Admiralty House, and also asking them to clean it for her.
I mean, it's just incredible. I literally, just a few days ago, Mike, I did a question about the Labour Party literally using civil service resources for Labour political propaganda. And they've actually, unbelievably, they actually did issue an official apology in that instance. But it's quite clear that they just see the state as their plaything, whereas it really should be what it really should be used for is in the interest of the British people. I'm really concerned about the way the Labour government's come in. It's just all over the place, and I think people are starting to see very quickly the wheels falling off Keir Starmer's administration, whether it comes to the winter fuel allowance and the attack on pensioners, whether it comes to the attack on small businesses with the inheritance tax changes, when it comes to attack on every worker in the country and their pay packet with these changes to national insurance. Whoever you are being hammered by Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. It really does feel like from the moment you wake up, they are trying to undermine you and your life in some way, shape or form. And then even on those issues which really affect traditionally Labour areas, like the issues around grooming gangs, they're not even then prepared to stand up for those communities. I really sometimes ask myself, what are they even for apart from for themselves?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We'll see if we can answer it in the next couple of years. Richard Holden MP, Shadow Paymaster General, thank you very much indeed.